You want my vote? Hey, you have power. Turn the ship around. You want my vote? Why don't you walk across the fucking hallway and talk to your boss about that? They say, vote for JD. Everybody needs to get on board for JD. I don't know. 47 is not doing such a great job. Maybe 48 should walk down the hall, knock on the door of the Oval Office and say, hey, you're killing my chance of getting elected. How's that for an incentive? You want to talk about Vance for 48? Everyone's getting behind him. We're all ready for that. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that until I get my mass deportations, until the war in Ukraine is over, until somebody can restrain Israel and prevent them from getting us into another war. I'm not getting ready to vote for anybody until we can shut down all immigration from all these countries. You want to bring in Indians and Chinese? Then start deporting more than you bring in. Get us to net zero. Then we can talk about skilled migration, or any migration for that matter. They're already telling us, get ready, get in line to vote again, get your registration. Fuck you. Everybody knows this country is finished. Everybody knows the country's going down the tubes. The Republicans will not lift a finger to do a thing about it. The graft, the corruption, the stealing, if you knew the extent of it, you would want a revolution tomorrow.
Hey guys, today we are going to revisit Nick's year-end review. Nick is going to talk about general subversive tactics that are used in politics. We're also going to touch base with the situation in Venezuela. We're going to connect that to Larry Silverstein, almost as a comparative case study, if you will. And we're going to talk about a little bit of history as well in terms of comparative case studies regarding subversive tactics used to take over a nation state sort of from the inside out. So we're going to bounce all around, fair warning. This is kind of a schizophrenic reaction today in terms of all the content we're going to cover and the connections I'm going to attempt to make. But if you're into it, stick around. We'll start off with Nick Fuentes, and then we're going to get into some pretty interesting clips.
We have been gearing up for this fight for 10 years. I always said that America First is inevitable because I knew that eventually the truth would get out. Eventually, white people were going to get tired of the Jewish oligarchy. They're going to get tired of the black crime. They're going to get tired of the mass migration. I always knew that America First would inevitably become mainstream, would inevitably become dominant. Here's the question now. As always, they are going to fight back in a way that is subversive and convoluted and which is not actually obvious. How are they going to fight back? Well, they're not going to directly fight me because they know how that would go. If Ben Shapiro sat with me in a debate, even to have the debate would be to finish the debate. To have a Jewish person that only cares about Israel sit down and have to defend like why we're going to war in the Middle East over nuclear weapons, to even have that debate would be to finish it once and for all. They don't want to create that dialectic. The day that you pose the question, should it be America first or Israel first, that's the day that every single person affirms America first. They're not going to have me sit down and debate Vivek Ramaswamy. The day that you put it up for debate, are we going to have a nation of flesh and blood people or a nation of ideas? That's the day that everybody affirms we want a nation of men, a nation of people, flesh and blood people that fought wars to defend the ideas that you claim is the sum of what we are. They are not going to create that dialectic. They're going to do something much more subtle and much more subversive and much more calculated and complex, which is they're going to try to skin suit this movement. It's like an alien invasion. One way the aliens could win is they could come down in spaceships with tentacles and all the rest, and they could declare war on humanity. But what happens when the aliens land in a flying saucer with the tentacles and 100 eyes? What happens when they declare war on humanity? They bind all of humanity together against the aliens. So the sophisticated aliens will do something more sophisticated. They do the invasion of the body snatchers. They look like people. They act like people. They're not people. And whether it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers or They Live, whatever, pick your poison, they look just close enough to people that they could slowly but surely capture the decision-making institutions, taste-making institutions, and then they influence the masses to become complacent in their slavery. This is always the track that the political class will take. They did it with the Tea Party movement. They did it with MAGA. Eventually, they stopped fighting Trump and they acquiesced, or they appeared to acquiesce, and they filled up Trump's White House. They filled up Mar-a-Lago. They filled up the cabinet. And they put on the MAGA hat, and they started swearing like Trump, and they started talking like Trump. And then they slowly but surely brought us back to establishment conservatism. Hence why this year, what did we get? Corporate tax cuts, bombing Iran, no mass deportations. We're actually protecting the illegals who work on farms. They're going to protect Jeffrey Epstein and all his clients.
So Nick is 100% correct. By way of deception, thou shalt wage war. Or we can go further east and say, the art of all war is deception. And this subversion has been taking place not just through both of the Trump presidencies, but really through the entirety of American history. You can go all the way back to the Panic of 1837. Watch August Schoenberg travel from Naples, Italy, where he worked for Karl of the Red Shields, over to America. Now, once in America, he worked at essentially a clearinghouse that connected Red Shield capital in Europe to bills of sale held by cotton merchants in America, which were functionally illiquid. Now, at the same time, August Schoenberg was also going around looking into all the securities held by the Red Shields that could potentially go belly up as a result of the Panic of 1837, and cataloging the strategic value of each of those securities, sending that information back to the Red Shields in Europe. So right away, just take note that information is the real currency here. That's not just a recurring theme, it is the core component in the infrastructure of power. But wait a minute, Nick was just talking about subversive tactics that are going to be used to take over the America First movement, and here I am talking about 1837, clearinghouses, liquidity, securities. How does that even relate to Nick's statements? Well, let's get into that. So the activities of August Schoenberg, those were just the superficial activities. The real subversive behavior that August Schoenberg performed for the Red Shields was cultural penetration and political penetration, and he did that in parallel with what I just described regarding liquidity management and clearinghouse activities. August Schoenberg came from Naples, Italy, and when he did that, he brought the culture of aristocracy with him. Bear in mind, August Schoenberg was born in Alzey, Germany, very poor, and he was raised up by the Midas touch from the Red Shields. So he was eager to absorb all of the aristocratic cultural flair that he observed in Naples with the Bourbon dynasty. He imported that culture to the United States and wrote the cultural playbook that would define the entire Gilded Age. So think of it, all of the real deals that are being made by the titans of industry and finance in the emerging American empire, all of those are happening in these social settings, in salons, during social events. This is the man who created the very nature and culture of those social environments. So in these social settings, the man who you want to talk to, if you want to get things done, if you want your deal to go through, if you want to connect to the vast pools of European bullion and liquidity, it's August Schoenberg. Only now, his name is no longer Schoenberg, it's August Belmont. You may recognize Belmont from the Belmont Stakes. So within the core domain, the core setting where success is made or lost by these titans of industry, the man who that power flows through is already himself entirely subservient to the Red Shields. Thus, the American titans of industry, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, they're already 3 layers down from the real king, but there's still one more attack factor in this strategy of subversion. And that attack factor takes place within the domain of the political system. August Belmont also rises to the top of the Democratic political party and completely co-ops the political party to his own ends. And his own ends are merely an extension of the core designs of the Red Shield banking network. So the mechanisms of subversion are old and redundant. Now, on top of this, we could tell the entire story of Jacob Schiff, but I've already gone quite heavily into detail with August Schoenberg as a case study. However, we'll just touch base real quick on Jacob Schiff. The election cycle of 1912. Taft decides to move against the interests of the Red Shields. Jacob Schiff funds the Bull Moose Party, which splits the Republican vote now between Taft and Roosevelt. Roosevelt is already in the pocket of the Red Shields, and even if Roosevelt doesn't win, we know very well from history that Wilson is also in the pocket of the Red Shields. And Wilson is, of course, the president who fully enslaves our nation to the banking interests of the Red Shields through the Federal Reserve Act. In case you're wondering why Jacob Schiff is relevant and how he fits into this sort of theoretical structure of how subversion works with these people, Jacob Schiff, his family grew up across the street from the Red Shields on Frankfurt am Main, and his father and grandfather were the brokers for the sovereign debt underwriting that the Red Shields provided, which in turn created the conditions for perpetual war to exist in Europe for the first time ever. It wasn't until the war bond market existed that white Europeans could go to war with each other perpetually. The war bond market connected foreign capital with war funding and allowed foreign interests to influence the political and sovereign outcomes of European sovereignties. So the main point here is to show you in detail not only that these subversive tactics have been around since the beginning of our nation state's existence, but to show you how they operate across the span of centuries and how these very tactics, they're the core attack vector that has been used to penetrate and conquer our national sovereignty since the beginning of the United States' existence. The next clip is going to show you just how far into this story of vassalage the United States is, because they do it right in your face, just out of an expression of pure and absolute dominance over us. They love to gloat about it, but they will still hide their subversive tactics as long as it's strategically necessary. And we're going to get into that in a little bit with the Venezuela situation.
And these people do like Israel.
Hold on. And he loves Israel too.
It's true.
2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, "This is our first Jewish president."
It's true.
Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
It's because they did a subversive strategy. And they're doing the same thing with America First. And if you pay close attention, this was the whole Tucker Carlson MO. He brought me on the show, wrapped his arms around me and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to listen to this kid who's got all these problems." And ever since we did the interview, he goes on every other show and says, "I tried to talk him in off the ledge and get him to stop being an anti-Semite. He hates women because he's afraid of women. I tried to get him to stop hating Jews, but I failed. I know the white replacement is happening, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. White identity is the only thing that can ruin America." He went around telling people that the whole purpose of the interview was to get me to talk, so I made myself look bad. He could give me a platform, earn the credibility from my audience, and then pitch something that looks the same but is ever so subtly different, which goes something like this. Jews are not the problem. It is neocons, and especially evangelical Christians. Non-white immigration isn't the problem. It is just mass migration in general, and we should have a colorblind meritocracy. Women aren't the problem. It's all of these culture and gender wars. It's all this other stuff that's happening. A subtle little difference. And this is what they're going to play on repeat in 2026. They're going to try to destroy my credibility and say, "Oh, well, I'm a freak. I'm a hater. I'm actually a horrible human being. I'm actually an anti-Semite." It's these other people that are pushing something constructive. Fuentes wants to burn it all down. These guys want to build everything up. Fuentes is a real racist. These guys have their criticisms about black crime, but they want a colorblind meritocracy. This is going to be the conceit going forward, this is how they will defang and neutralize the groypers. They're going to offer a moderate option. It is going to look and sound like me, but on the fundamentals, it's going to be completely different. They will not affirm the reality and centrality of race. They will not talk about our Jewish mafia that is running the fucking planet. They're not going to talk about feminism in and of itself being the problem. They'll say it's affluent white female liberals, but they'll never say it's feminism in itself, which is actually the root of all evil. And they will pitch something, like I said, they might say, like Tucker did, retard and faggot, and they might make some gesture towards 13-50 and some of this humor. They'll do some insinuation about conspiracy theories or Jews, but they will always bring it back home to, what about those good Jews? But race isn't actually meaningful. The speech about blood guilt, etc., etc., that is going to be the playbook. And so I don't know if they'll kill me in 2026. I don't know what they're cooking up for me, what they have in store for me. But in 2026, that is the year where they're going to try to strike at the head, the sheep scatter, and they're going to try to corral them back into slavery incorporated with some kind of groyper veneer. That's going to be the playbook. You can take that to the bank. They're already playing it. They've already been playing it. And that was the 1-2 punch of Tucker and Piers Morgan. Bring me onto the show, making of a murderer. Let's get a glimpse into the twisted mind of Nick Fuentes and show everybody how evil he is and how anyone could follow him. Then bring him on Piers Morgan to reveal the real Nick Fuentes that loves Hitler and this, that, and the other. That's the MO. I would add one final thing, and then we'll move on. Here's the biggest play. In the end, where all of this is headed is J.D. Vance for president in 2028. That is the lead which they have buried. As quickly as they got J.D. Vance in the vice presidency nomination last year, they want to get him in the Oval Office in 2028. They want to make him the president. Why? Who knows? But there are powerful, powerful forces in Silicon Valley, billionaires, the GOP, all the king's men that want to make J.D. Vance the president. And I have identified myself very early on as an opponent of J.D. Vance. And for that, they want to bury me. For that, they want to kill me. Because I'm telling a lot of young men that Vance is going to need in the election, I'm telling a lot of young men, do not trust this guy because this guy is a creep. We don't know who he is. We don't know what his real name is. We don't know what his real job is. We don't know who he owes, who blackmailed him, who he works for. We just don't know anything about this guy, and it's weird. It's weird. He's weird. His family's weird. It's weird that they're all promoting him. Something is not right here. And that much is obvious. Everybody with eyes can see that something is off about that. And that's the biggest thing. And I believe it when I say this, that if I were going out on the show every night and saying, let's all be good team players and let's all vote for J.D. Vance in 28, they would tolerate me. Trust me when I tell you that if I were going out every day on the show and saying, let's all be good little Republicans and let's dutifully vote for J.D. Vance, you know they would tolerate me. They would tolerate my antics. They would tolerate my extremism. They would tolerate all of it. They would bring me in under their wing as a junior partner. They would pat me on the head. They would give me opportunities if I was willing to play ball, if I was willing to horse trade, if I was willing to say, vote for JD, everybody, we got to be all in. But they are clearing the runway. They have created a media ecosystem using comedians, using podcasts, using conventions, using things like Turning Point. They have created a runway. And they have cleared the runway for Vance to be unopposed in 28, to raise $1 billion and then to be the next president, to inherit all the machinery that Trump created, all this stuff that Trump has done with the executive branch, all the rules Trump has broken. They want J.D. Vance to inherit that. You want to know why? It's the same reason Elon Musk was brought into this administration. Elon Musk brought in Doge in the beginning of the year. They cut no waste, fraud, or abuse. They didn't cut any spending. But you know what they did do? Elon Musk made all the hiring decisions in the Pentagon. Elon Musk and the Silicon Valley people, they made all the decisions about hiring and firing in the Department of War. Why does that matter? Because the Department of War is going to determine who gets the military contracts when the military embraces AI, when the military embraces unmanned aircraft, boats, vehicles. Who is going to build the fleet of unmanned ships? Who is going to build the fleet of unmanned aircraft, of drones? Who is going to handle AI for the military? It will be those people that were brought in because of Elon's money, because of David Sachs' fundraiser, brokered by Vance. They will be making those decisions. Like, for example, they're going to bring in Anduril, Palmer Luckey's company, funded by Thiel. Vance actually brokered the deal for venture capital to invest in Anduril. Vance's position at Mithril, Peter Thiel's venture capital firm, allowed Vance to funnel money into Palmer Luckey's Anduril. Where is Anduril building their drone factory? In Ohio. In Ohio, where J.D. Vance is from, where Les Wexner did a fundraiser for Vance to make him the senator. And now that Vance left his Senate seat, they arranged for the lieutenant governor of Ohio to fill that Senate seat, so he would be taken out of the running for Ohio governor, and Trump would endorse Vivek Ramaswamy. So that when Ramaswamy becomes governor of Ohio, they will be favorable to Palmer Luckey's Anduril plant, and his people in the Pentagon will buy his drones and whatever. That's a taste. That's a taste of what you can expect when Vance becomes president. It's a taste. And when Elon dragged his people through all the different government departments and agencies to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, they didn't do a lot of cutting, but you know what they did bring in? They brought in Palantir. How are we going to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse? We have to take all the data from the Social Security Administration, from the Treasury Department, from the Education Department. We have to plug it into our AI software so that we can evaluate where the waste, fraud, and abuse is. Well, they didn't cut $2 trillion or even $1 trillion in spending as promised, but you know what they did do? They got 4 more departments and agencies onto Palantir software.
And this is where J.D. Vance comes back into the picture, is J.D. Vance was raised up by Peter Thiel, essentially. Jimmy Dore has a great interview with Whitney Webb about this shortly before Donald Trump was elected. And Whitney outlines not just Vance's connections to Peter Thiel, but Peter Thiel's connections to Richard Pearl and the old Total Information Awareness System. Total Information Awareness was the system that Palantir eventually emerged from, and it was a government-run system, and they decided that the government wasn't allowed to have that power, so they simply privatized it. Palantir's only client for, I think, the first 10 years of its existence was the CIA, and this all happened before In-Q-Tel even existed, I believe, and In-Q-Tel is the capital investment arm of the CIA. These guys want with J.D. Vance exactly what they wanted with Joe Biden. Just because they switched the color from red to blue doesn't mean that the people in power switched it all. They want a total surveillance system. They want a global panopticon. They use the vaccine to justify that with the people on the left, the people that like the blue color. That was their buy-in for total surveillance. And then they opened up the borders and let a bunch of dangerous foreigners in, and that created the buy-in for the right. So now the right will say, oh, well, we want total surveillance too if that gets rid of all these foreigners. You can see Laura Loomer posting about this a while back and saying how she was so excited for Palantir to be used to secure the borders. So subversion is the name of the game. The outcome that they desire is the same regardless of the political party that's in power. And Nick's assessment of this situation is it's just right on.
And they are the Social Security Administration. They are Health and Human Services. They are the Treasury Department and the Department of Education. What a coincidence. Because Elon Musk was at PayPal, like Peter Thiel. It's all the same people. Andreessen Horowitz, Oracle, PayPal, Palantir, these are all the same people working for all the same investors, working for all the same founders. And they were all at the same fundraiser, and they all gave their money to this administration. And there it is. That's the other thing they're going to push in 26. They want to neutralize all the enemies of Vance so that in 2027, no one is even going to think of challenging Vance in the primary. They want to clear the way so that DeSantis, so that Rubio, so that nobody will even think of raising a challenge. Vance will secure the nomination, and then as quickly as he became the nominee, he'll become the president. And that's how you go from a never-Trumper in 2020 to a Trump-endorsed, Thiel-funded senator in 22 to a Thiel, Tucker, Elon lobbied vice presidential candidate in 24. And in 25, they're ready to give him the crown. They want him to be the president. We don't even know who the fuck he is. This administration is already crashing and burning, and he's the number 2 in command. And they're ready for him to be the next guy.
And the irony here is that this behavior with J.D. Vance choosing him as the successor, it mirrors the exact behavior of the left, of the Democrats, of the blue team during the last election cycle when they simply placed Kamala in the role as the presidential nominee. Now, back then, the people on the right would complain about that behavior because it was occurring on the left. Now that it's occurring on their side, you will see just how vacuous and empty most of these people actually are. They're just as bad as the people on the left. They will get behind Vance because it's what they're told to do. They will get behind Vance because they do not think for themselves, and that is why they call you going.
So this is a message, this is a plea, this is a beacon to all real Americans. If you want to take your country back, you have to stand up and take your own side. It's all coming down to this. This country is not here for AI. This country is not here for a bunch of immigrant founders. This country does not belong to Indians and Jews. This country belongs to the descendants of the people that founded it. It belongs to European civilization and Christendom. And if you want to foist this fat jelly donut on us as president with this Indian wife and kids, then you better give us what we deserve. An immigration moratorium. We need to restrain Israel. We want our country back. Don't just give it up without a fight. Oh, I guess we're all just voting for Vance. I guess we're all just doing this now. No, fuck that. Whether a Republican wins in 28 or not, this country is finished. You do realize that, right? They'll tell you, well, it's better than the Democrat. Well, it's better than nothing. Well, it's better than the alternative. Whether a Republican wins or a Democrat wins doesn't make a fucking difference, as evidenced by this administration. This country is going down the tubes with or without Trump winning in 24. It'll go down the tubes with or without Vance winning in 2028. Understand that. We're finished. Whatever happens there. We need drastic action. So it's time for white people to start demanding more from our elected representatives. It's all these other people that would convince you to settle for less. Negotiate with yourself and settle for less. Settle for whatever they will serve up on a platter. Settle for whatever slop and shit they're going to feed you. And we're going to have to start to say, no, we deserve more than what we're getting. We deserve more than what we're getting from Trump. We deserve more than what we're getting from our elites. If you want us to get on board, you better earn it. You better make it worth our while. And that is something they do not want to have to do. That's the real battle. They're not after me. They're after all of you because they want your vote. They're not after me. They don't give a shit about me one way or the other. They want me to get everybody to calm down. They want me to corral everybody and lead them to Vance. They want me to get everybody to chill out, stop being angry, stop being mad that our country's being destroyed. Just chill out and relax, and let's just vote Republican every year forever. Just keep voting Republican. Don't look up. Don't look right or left at how you're being outnumbered. Just shut the fuck up and vote Republican. We promise we'll make a Big Mac cheaper. And I won't do it. And for that, they're going to try to get me killed. So that's what's on my radar in 2026. And I'll tell you what else. 2026, we'd be lucky if we stay out of war with Iran. Look at the year in review for this Trump administration. Take this to the bank. 2025, what did they tell you? They told you this year was going to be a golden age. Think about where we were this time last year. Does anybody remember? Does anybody remember where you were on election night in 2024? I remember where I was. I was here streaming this show, feeling like an idiot because I didn't vote for Trump and everybody was so exuberant, so over the moon. Everybody was celebrating. Do you remember where you were? Do you remember the excitement, the energy, the hopes, the expectations? And then what happened? A month later, we got Vivek Ramaswamy and Sriram Krishnam and Elon Musk telling us that if we didn't want infinite H-1B visas, that we should fuck ourselves in the face. We got Marco Rubio as our Secretary of State, John Ratcliffe as the director of the CIA. Total disappointment as far as the cabinet is concerned. They promised us it would be different this time. It would be a golden age. They said there would be mass deportations. You're going back, they said. And how are we doing here in 2025? Well, let's see. According to the latest ICE data, we have deported 330,000 people this year. 330,000. So Joe Biden brought in 10 million in 4 years. That's an average of 2.5 million per year. We deported 300,000 this year. You multiply that by 4, we get 1.2 million by the end of the first term. That's not massive. How are we doing in terms of the wars? Well, let's see. Trump has bombed Somalia more than any president in history. We bombed Nigeria on Christmas. We've bombed Venezuela 25 times. We bombed Iran. We bombed Syria last week. We bombed Yemen. We went to war with Yemen for a month. How many countries has the Trump administration bombed? I think it's a dozen. We're still at war in Ukraine. Looks like we're going to go back into Iran pending the 5th meeting between Trump and Netanyahu on the 29th to bomb their ballistic missile program. How about trade and tariffs? Is that making the economy stronger? In October, they didn't even release the jobs numbers because it was so bad. No infrastructure bill, no investment, no jobs in the country. We did get a corporate tax cut, an extension of the corporate tax cut from 2017. How about transparency on the JFK assassination, Epstein files, 9/11? We got none of it. Congress had to force the Trump administration to release the Epstein files, and the files we got are heavily redacted. They're withholding most of them, and the ones that we got, it's like a joke. They're blacked out completely. People had to actually copy and paste the text, had to use an exploit in the documents to even get anything out of them. 1 year in, it is a complete disaster, maybe a disaster exceeding anybody's expectations. And what did they say about me during the election last year? They said I was a Democrat shill. They said I was a Democrat plant for saying that maybe we should have some expectations. In 2024, I said, I will not vote for Trump unless he pledges not to bomb Iran, unless he promises an immigration moratorium. Well, Trump bombed Iran, and in terms of immigration, we filled the H-1B cap, we doubled the number of Chinese students, and we don't have mass deportations. So maybe it would have been a good thing if we forced Trump's feet to the fire on those issues. Maybe it would have been a good thing if we demanded a commitment back then when he needed our vote, not now when he needs nothing from us. For that, I was called a shill, plant, a fed. They said I made a deal with the FBI. To avoid prosecution, I said that I would not get Trump elected. Now you see that I was right. And the reason I bring this up is because just as quickly as Trump has crashed and burned, they want us to forget about it and already get ready for the next one. As quickly as Trump has crashed and burned, it took all of 1 year for every promise to be broken, every promise to be totally destroyed. They want us to get ready to hold our nose and vote for the next one. You don't like this administration? Well, get ready to vote for the second in command in this administration, because that will surely be better. Why would it be better? Why is it better for us to commit right now? Why is it better? Why would we even, in the first place, why would it be smart for us to commit to vote at all in 2028? Why don't you worry about this year? Why don't you worry about governing? You want us to vote in 28? It's 25 and nothing is going right. Why don't you worry about this administration? Worry about 2026 and 2027. Worry about keeping your promises, doing a good job before we even think about voting in 28 at all. But to boot, they want us to get ready to vote for the second in command? There's not even a primary. We don't even know who this guy is. What does he do other than give speeches? Well, he gave a great speech at Turning Point. He's saying all the right things. Okay, well, so did Trump. So did Obama. So did a lot of people. That's politics. He said all the right things. Everybody says the right things. That's politics. Okay, he's good at saying the right things. It's not that hard, actually. Why don't we wait and see? And that's my pitch. I'm not pledging to vote for anybody, Republican or Democrat, J.D. Vance or anybody else, until we actually get to 2028. I want to see who the candidates are. I want to see their pitch, and I want to see how this vice president governs. You want my vote? Hey, you have power. Turn the ship around. You want my vote? Why don't you walk across the fucking hallway and talk to your boss about that? They say, vote for JD. Everybody needs to get on board for JD. I don't know. 47 is not doing such a great job. Maybe 48 should walk down the hall, knock on the door of the Oval Office and say, hey, you're killing my chance of getting elected. How's that for an incentive? You want to talk about Vance for 48? Everyone's getting behind him. We're all ready for that. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that until I get my mass deportations, until the war in Ukraine is over, until somebody can restrain Israel and prevent them from getting us into another war. I'm not getting ready to vote for anybody until we can shut down all immigration from all these countries. You want to bring in Indians and Chinese? Then start deporting more than you bring in. Get us to net zero. Then we can talk about skilled migration, or any migration for that matter. They're already telling us, get ready, get in line to vote again, get your registration. Fuck you. Everybody knows this country is finished. Everybody knows the country's going down the tubes. The Republicans will not lift a finger to do a thing about it. The graft, the corruption, the stealing, if you knew the extent of it, you would want a revolution tomorrow.
And that brings us back to Venezuela and the general vacuous and completely empty nature of most people on the right that mirrors the true nature of most people on the left. The true frame of reference is no longer left or right at all, and it never really was. The true frame of reference is America first or extinct. Realistically, the reason we are in the position we are as Americans is that both the left and the right are hollow of courage and honesty, which is why they're both taken advantage of using the exact same manipulation techniques. Now, on the right, every MAGA chud out there will just echo over and over again how awesome it is that we have taken out Maduro and we are taking over Venezuela and we're going to take over their oil reserves. Meanwhile, they don't care that we won't fix any of the actual problems here in the United States. All of the fraud going on with the daycare, nothing will happen to that. We're invading another nation instead. But everyone on the right, they don't care. They think they've got their scalps, they've got their quick dopamine fix. They are as easy to manipulate as the left. However, if you start to dig into the Venezuela story, you will see that, as always, the success of the United States is filtered first through the channel of the success of another nation state in the Levant. Always, the only way for the United States to succeed is to funnel our success through them. Because we are penetrated by a fifth column, they are going to use us up and bleed us dry exactly as they did to the British Empire, exactly as they did to the Dutch before them. This is an Emma story on repeat with these people. Go look up Paul Singer. Paul Singer is a prominent billionaire, a member of the Chosen Ones. He has purchased Citgo for pennies on the dollar. With the aid of the United States sanctioning Venezuela and lowering the price for him, lowering the barrier of entry. And now we're going to go in after taking out Maduro and secure the infrastructure itself using taxpayer dollars and American lives. Go on Twitter and check out the Finance Lancelot account, or go check out Chris Menahan's account to get the full story on Paul Singer. It will make your blood boil. You will not look at Venezuela the same way again. I'm going to play a clip for you momentarily about Larry Silverstein. And I hope that you can see the parallels, the structural parallels between that situation with Larry Silverstein and this situation with Singer. Because they're using the same tactics and the same techniques over and over and over again. And us as Americans, we are letting them do it by not stopping them. It is our fault for not defending ourselves.
Reportedly, by the year 2000, the Port Authority was looking at an asbestos abatement bill of as much as $1 billion, the same money it would have cost to build a brand new tower. Back in the 90s, the Port Authority had sued the insurance companies, trying to get them to cover the cost of the asbestos removal. But in May 2001, 4 months before the terrorist attack, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey lost their 10-year-old court battle. At that point, the Port Authority was between a rock and a hard place. The Twin Towers could no longer be maintained without incurring the cost of asbestos removal, yet they could not be demolished because of the large amounts of asbestos they contained. The only remaining option was to dismantle and remove the two poison-filled giants one piece at a time. But the cost of such an operation would have been so astronomical that no one has ever tried to put a number on it. Luckily for all, the stalemate was broken when a real estate tycoon named Larry Silverstein, who already owned Building 7, offered to purchase a 99-year lease for the Twin Towers.
76 years old, and look at him go. He walks fast, talks fast, and is always selling.
Silverstein seemed in a big hurry to close the deal. Even though he had been hospitalized for a car accident during the bidding operations, he asked his doctors to take him off the morphine so the deal could be finalized.
So I told the doctor, I said, kill the morphine, and I got to get my people in here, because you can't think with morphine. So they let the morphine run down. The pain was terrible, but I brought everybody together, and that's when we framed our best and final bid.
On July 24th, 2001, Larry Silverstein celebrated the acquisition of the Twin Towers with a public ceremony.
Silverstein signed the lease on the World Trade Center just 6 weeks before 9/11.
He then took out an insurance policy covering the Twin Towers for $3.2 billion in case of total destruction. Silverstein then began spending every morning of the week in his new office in the North Tower.
And so my mornings were spent at the Trade Center, and then by noon I was back uptown.
But on September 11, luckily for him, Silverstein didn't go to work. Even though he had already scheduled a business meeting in the North Tower, he found out that his wife had made an appointment for him at the dermatologist.
The morning of September 11th, Silverstein was scheduled to have breakfast at the restaurant at the top of the North Tower. He canceled at the last minute at the insistence of his wife, Clara, who wanted him to go see his dermatologist.
That particular morning, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me at the doctor. And I said, okay, yes, dear, I'll go.
Everyone who was in that restaurant that morning perished.
And then, just minutes later, received a telephone call to turn on a television set and witnessed this horrendous circumstance.
This is how, on the evening of September 11, Larry Silverstein found himself in control of some 12 million square feet of new office space to be built on some of the most valuable real estate in the world. And since the terrorist attacks had been two separate events, contended Silverstein, the insurance companies would have to pay him $7 billion to rebuild what he has always been calling My Three Towers.
I will spend $7 billion on My Three Towers.
Eventually, a settlement was reached for $4.5 billion, which was still one-third more than the amount initially insured by Silverstein. And since on September 11, due to the terrorist attacks, Building 7 had also been destroyed, Silverstein received another $800 million to rebuild a skyscraper that had originally cost $400 million.
It's a much more beautiful building. It's a glass facade, allows the light to come into the space. The views on four sides are phenomenal, and the space looks magnificent.
In the meantime, all the asbestos from the Twin Towers has been inhaled by the citizens of downtown Manhattan, and especially by the first responders and volunteers who worked at Ground Zero, who are now being decimated by mesothelioma and other pulmonary diseases.
If you could see the graft and the corruption, the stealing that is going on in this administration from these people that were picked by Trump, it is just the most brazen cronyism and larceny, embezzlement you've ever even heard of. It's like unheard of. And they're already telling you, well, get ready to vote for Vance. It is a level of hubris I've never seen before. And I'm one of the only people that's not at the party. I'm one of the only people that's not being paid under the table in 24 and 25. All these other people are ready to say, well, I like Vance. Well, I'm getting ready to vote Republican. Well, Trump's still doing an okay job. No, I don't think so. I don't think you understand. There's a lot more urgency, and we want more than what we're getting. So I'm leaving myself open to all options, and I'm willing to punish the GOP. I do believe the GOP needs to be burned to the fucking ground. Because I'll tell you what, if Donald Trump cannot get it together in the next 3 years, that is exactly what the GOP deserves. The voters did their part. The voters delivered the White House, the popular vote, the Electoral College, the House, the Senate. The voters delivered a mandate. If you can't capitalize on this the third time, you won in 2016, you blew it in 20, you got back in 24. If you blew yet another opportunity when you had everything going for you, you promised so much, delivered so little. If you blow it again, you don't deserve to get in power for another 4 years. You deserve to be fired. The GOP deserves to be burned to the fucking ground. And they want to say, well, we'll never come back from that. Well, it'll take us all this time to rebuild, but this. Then you better get your ass in overdrive. Don't tell me I'm a podcaster. Don't come and give me a hard time. I'm not running for office. I'm a live streamer. I'm a podcaster. I'm a weird kid in my basement, for crying out loud. Don't come and cry to me. Well, we're trying to win in 28 and you're not being a good member of the team. I'm not a member of the team. I don't have a jersey and I don't have a contract and I'm not getting fucking paid. Don't come and tell me about we're going to have a hard time in 28. You have an opportunity. You have the House. You have the Senate. You have the White House. You ran the table and the voters delivered. And now you're fucking stealing. You're not delivering. You're flapping your gums. You're stealing. You're lazy. Nobody gives a shit. And you want us to go out and vote again in 28? We should go out and destroy you in 28. We should go out and absolutely burn you to the ground in 28. You'd be lucky to leave with your lives and only have the party destroyed for this treason. They go in July and say, you want the Epstein tapes? I don't need your vote. You want the Epstein tapes? You're a sucker. You want me then to go and campaign for this shit? J.D. Vance goes on Theo Von and says, I don't know what Palantir is. I don't know what that is. Tucker goes on Theo Von. I don't know what Palantir is. Oh, like hell you don't know what Palantir is. You fucking liar.
Look, we built PG, which single-handedly stopped the rise of the far right in Europe. We built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally. We built what we call multi-constellation, and what's often called the digital kill chain. And they're category-defining products. So when you deliver these products to the market, just honestly, people say this isn't going to exist, this isn't valuable, but then it changes the market. And then the market is the Palantir market. Now, that doesn't mean everyone in the world is going to buy our product, but it means most of the sensible people in the world are going to buy from the category we defined.
It's disgusting. So my message is this. There is a loaded gun pointed at the GOP. Fix it now. Fix the country or get blown away in 28. That's it. No negotiations. No one's holding their nose one more time. No one's going to be a good sport. We're not going to hold the line. We're not going to vote for the lesser of two evil. There is a loaded gun pointed at the GOP, figuratively, not literally. Figuratively, it's a very toxic climate right now, violent climate. But figuratively, there's a loaded gun pointed at the GOP. You better fix this country. J.D. Vance, you better march down to the Oval Office and get this guy awake from his nap and fix the country, or none of us are turning out in 28. That's an ultimatum. Don't say we wanted to burn it to the ground. We wanted to succeed. You have left us no choice. And then we'll have a new generation in 2032. You don't want to see what that looks like. You think this is bad? You don't want to see what comes next if Trump fails. So don't give me this, well, they only want to destroy and we want to build. You want to build? Well, then get started. Get started on the mass deportations. Don't tell me about 600,000 Chinese students and you're going to fill the H-1B visa cap every year, and we need the students for the universities, and we need the talent, and we need the labor, and all that nonsense. You keep talking like that, you could blow it out your ass in 28.
Well, there you have it in a nutshell. Really a meandering reaction by me today, but I guess that's just where my head's at, what I'm looking at. Nick's end of the year review once more. I think that Nick has called out some correct predictions once again. I really like what he had to say about the use of subversive tactics. I think that we need to be deeply aware of those mechanisms as Americans. And I think that he's correct in terms of the state of emergency that we're in. So I just wanted to draw together a few of those dots, in particular that the subversive tactics, they've been going on for centuries, and that is the time scale on which these people are operating. And so we need to think on the same time scale as them, and we need to be intelligent enough to identify their tactics. Even if they're not something that we are inclined to use ourselves as tactics, we have to be able to identify them. And I think that Nick calls them out, and I really just wanted to present a historical case study that shows exactly how some of these tactics have worked over the ages. If you made it this far in the video, honestly, I'm pretty impressed. Thank you for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment down below.